Barring some unexpected decommitments from some Iowa football quarterback recruits, the Hawkeyes are set at QB through now 2026. The irony of a video recorded, like 9 months ago? Cash Herrera decommitting earlier this summer, and he has since committed to Indiana. The impact now moving forward for Iowa football at quarterback. He's not the only one who has left since we cut that video last October, from Marco Linez to Brendan Sullivan, and of course now Cash Herrera. We can't forget about James Rezar, who was at one point a quarterback Iowa fans were excited about, even though he committed during the Brian Ferentz era. We'll talk about the 2026 class and Iowa looking at quarterbacks. Who's on the table? What are the options? What does Iowa do now with Cash Herrera gone? We'll talk about that in just a second. Big thank you, though, first of all, to our sponsor. We appreciate our guy down in Mitchellville, Randy Engel, producing great artwork, Hawkeye-themed artwork, and he's going to have some signed prints for people. Check this out, folks. Coming up on August 17th, down at the Coralville Lantern Park Hy-Vee, you can get a signed print from none other than Angelo Ferrari and Stephen Buchanan. So if you're into wrestling, we've been providing some wrestling coverage here of late here on the platform. Be sure you head over to the Coralville Lantern Park Hy-Vee, 3 to 4 p.m. on August 17th for an exclusive Under the Kitchen signed Hawkeye print with none other than Angelo Ferrari and Stephen Buchanan. We appreciate Randy Engel down at Under the Kitchen in Mitchellville. So, of course, this is not news. I want to make sure I'm prefacing what I'm about to say by acknowledging I'm not breaking news. I've been ripped because I'm talking about things that have already occurred. But we're here to talk about the future. What does Iowa do now at quarterback? We didn't cut a video when Cash Herrera initially decommitted. Of course, we talked about it with our good friend Mark Rogers on our weekly show over at the Voice of College Football, which, by the way, I'm going to be talking about a new feature of that show here at the tail end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But Herrera had committed to Iowa last October, had turned down offers from places like UCLA and Cal, although Cal did not offer him until after he committed to Iowa. He also picked up an Arizona offer after he committed to Iowa. And so we said back in October, I mean, you heard me in that short little clip, barring something unforeseen, something unexpected, a lot of time when you have over a year for schools to tamper without tampering, right? It's not really against the rules. It's not against the rules at all. Guys can commit, but that doesn't mean anything until they're signed. And even then we know there's some gray area. But yeah, I mean, Cash Herrera was a prospect Iowa was excited about, hailed from La Jolla, California in the San Diego area, same area that Jackson Stratton grew up in. This was a Tim Lester kid the Hawkeyes wanted, and he was a mobile guy, not a dual threat quarterback, but somebody who had good escapability. If you recall, in our commitment video for Cash Herrera, I talked about his ability to escape the pocket. He's got a real smooth, quick release. He's got nice touch, especially on his deep ball, but he is a pro-style quarterback and not the biggest, 6'2", 6'3", in that range. And Cash Herrera committed to Indiana just 1 week after decommitting from Iowa. So just last month in June, decommits from Iowa, heads to Indiana for a visit, and commits that same weekend, I believe, after the visit to Indiana. And he did cite Curt Cignetti's early success with that program. Apparently, he's grown close to QB's coach Chandler Whitmer since IU started pushing for him in the spring. And keep this in mind, Indiana was in hard on Luke Fahey, who is an ascending 2026 quarterback, but Fahey recently committed to Ohio State. So Indiana likely, I don't want to say money was involved here. I don't know how much money's being thrown away at the high school level for some of these kids, but at quarterback, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm sure Indiana put everything on the table they had to make sure they had a backup plan. And Cash Herrera, I would think, is a pretty good backup plan, somebody who is committed to a respected Big Ten institution like Iowa. So Indiana steals him, and it sounds like Iowa had basically had a conversation with Cash Herrera prior to his decommitment, his announcement on social media that, hey, if you want to take other visits, that's fine, but we're going to break this bond, break the cord. And it's interesting, HawkeyeReport.com, our good friends over at Hawkeye Report, Tom Kakert and company, have reported that Iowa is still looking at a potential add in 2026. I mean, typically you're not going to go a year where you don't have a quarterback. I don't think by any means that it would be a death sentence if they didn't take a QB in 2026. Sounds like they're potentially looking at a Ball State quarterback, or a commitment, I should say, a Ball State, who, of course, is not yet signed, doesn't have any other Power 4 options. We can talk about him in a minute. But the one thing that was brought up by Tom Kakert, I know, during a recent episode of their show, you can definitely check out their podcast over at Hawkeye Report. I don't have a ton of time to listen to podcasts, but as I've been on vacation, I've been able to check out a little bit and get caught up on some of their coverage. And one thing that Tom brought up was, Iowa has had this motto in the past that if you're a recruit, a commit, and you want to take other visits, you're going to break the bond, right? Benjamin's a good example of that way back when. And Iowa has been a little bit more reasonable, flexible in recent years. I think of Nick Brooks, Caden Proctor, some of these high major guys who have taken other visits and then later decided to decommit. So is Iowa returning to that rule that if you're going to take other visits, you better decommit first? We'll have to wait and see. If this was a strained relationship because Iowa had pursued a second 2026 quarterback after Cash Herrera had committed, perhaps there was some strain on the relationship there. Just don't know for sure. But Cash Herrera is going to be a Hoosier in December, barring something unforeseen. I do think Iowa has moved on from him completely. It is interesting, ever since Cash Herrera committed to Iowa, his numbers, his recruiting rankings have gone down. I'll give you an example. When he initially committed to Iowa, On3 had Cash Herrera as a top 600 guy nationally. In fact, very close to top 500 nationally for their On3 industry ranking. He has since fallen to just inside the top 1,000 in their On3/Rivals industry ranking. So interesting there as well. Not anything against Cash Herrera. Iowa will likely have to face him at some point during his IU career. And that's a couple of Iowa quarterback targets in 26 that the Hawkeyes have lost out on. The other being Michael Clayton, who was offered by Iowa in that 26 class. He's committed to play for Illinois. Now, as far as other quarterbacks on the table, I mentioned the kid from Ball State. That is none other than Mason Atkins, who, by the way, doesn't have any other high major offers. He's currently committed to Ball State. So did Iowa break this bond with Cash Herrera too prematurely? Could they have somehow salvaged what bit of attachment he still had with the Hawkeyes? I mean, who knows? Obviously, there have been months and months of this brewing with IU and other schools being involved ever since he committed to Iowa. And I mean, Hawkeye fans aren't going to be jumping for joy if you get a kid who is committed to a MAC school in Ball State. I think what will likely happen, this is just my hunch, is I think Iowa will likely just say, hey, we're going to wait. They don't have a real big 26 class in place right now. They've had a couple of nice commits here over the last couple of weeks. But I think they'll just wait and see what happens. They got a young group in the room. Jimmy Sullivan, we know Jeremy Hecklinski, the transfer from Wake Forest who came over. He's young. And you also have Hank Brown, who's young out of Auburn. I don't think there's any reason to panic at quarterback. They have a good nucleus of good players. The class just isn't big. And no, they don't have a quarterback technically in that class. Case Vandenbosch, if you go up and look at Iowa's offers from 2026 quarterbacks, he's a kid Iowa offered, but that was back when Brian Ferentz was still the quarterbacks coach, I believe. He's since committed to Air Force. And then the other guys who Iowa has officially offered, a kid that's committed to Auburn, a kid who's committed to Alabama, a kid who's committed to USC. So it's going to be hard to flip any of those guys. It's probably going to be somebody we haven't really heard of, unless it's the Atkins kid from Ball State who did come to Iowa's recent junior day. So that's basically all there is to report at this time. I just don't think it's time to hit the panic button, and a lot can happen before the end of December when we hit the early signing period. Well, folks, appreciate you being here. Hit that thumbs up button. Thank you for your like in advance. Be sure you're subscribed to the platform as we ramp up coverage for football season. And I want to let you know that on Tuesday, it's the first edition of Big Ten Live with myself and Mark Rogers. We'll start our dual show, our two-part show, our Iowa Hawkeyes Live and Big Ten Live shows at 4 p.m. Central Time over at Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football. It's going to be an hour and a half of fun with myself and the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers. Appreciate you being here. Get over there on Tuesday. Be here back tomorrow for more coverage right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm.